The broadcast moved across every star system like a cold wind, the emblem of the Galactic Council glowing on thousands of screens. Alien leaders sat in a grand hall of glass and gold, their faces calm, their voices polished, their words dripping with false sorrow. They called the destruction of Colony 17 a necessary measure, an action taken for the stability of the galaxy. 20,000 humans were gone. Men, women, children, soldiers, all burned in their homes while the Council's fleets stood above the planet, their weapons turning oceans to steam. When the last transmission from the colony faded, a single sentence followed from the Council chair: "The matter is closed." Then they smiled for the cameras. On Earth, no one smiled. The news came in silence. The feed cut out, leaving a black screen that stayed on every channel. People stared at it in disbelief, waiting for someone to speak, waiting for someone to tell them it was a lie. But no voice came. Cities that never slept went quiet. The lights of New Tokyo dimmed. New London's sky trains stopped moving. In Lagos, the great markets closed early. On the colonies of Mars and Luna, miners dropped their tools and looked toward the distant blue planet, waiting for Earth to answer. But Earth did not answer. For 3 days, humanity said nothing. The world stayed still. No news, no speeches, no military response. To the aliens watching, it looked like fear. They thought humans were grieving, broken, small. They had seen this before with weaker species. First the tears, then the surrender. But humans were different. The silence wasn't weakness. It was the sound of something shifting inside a billion hearts. It was the sound of mercy dying. Inside a quiet control room under Geneva, the United Earth Defense Council sat in darkness. Generals, scientists, presidents, and admirals filled the room. No one spoke above a whisper. On the large screen, the last image of Colony 17 burned. A mother clutching her child, the sky turning white behind them. The feed cut at the flash. Admiral Elias Reeves's chair was empty, a memorial hologram glowing where he once sat today. They thought he died in the siege of Titan years ago. Beside his name were others, thousands gone. A single tear rolled down the cheek of Commander Asher Kane. She wiped it away quickly, ashamed of showing pain. The president finally broke the silence. "They think we will ask for mercy," she said softly. "Let's make sure they learn what mercy costs." In the cities, ordinary people lit candles at their windows. They didn't cry anymore. They watched the stars, remembering the faces of those on Colony 17. Children held pictures of lost relatives. Soldiers returned to bases quietly, without orders. Engineers re-entered old bunkers, unlocking systems long sealed. The air itself felt heavy, as if the planet was holding its breath. On the third night, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, something ancient woke. A vast steel structure, asleep for nearly a century, hummed to life. The water around it glowed faintly as turbines spun. It wasn't on any map. Built in secret generations ago, it was Earth's heartbeat, the Arc network. Its systems scanned every satellite and found the Council's eyes watching. One by one, those eyes went dark. No one on the surface noticed, but the Council did. Their analysts reported strange anomalies. Their response was laughter. "The primitives can't even reach beyond Mars," one delegate said. "Let them hide." But Earth was not hiding. It was preparing. In the deserts of Australia, the ground opened, revealing hidden silos covered in dust and time. Massive railguns rose toward the sky. Over the Arctic Circle, a fleet of drones ascended silently, each bearing the mark of the old Terran fleet, a symbol the Council had banned decades ago. On the far side of the moon, engineers in gray suits uncovered a structure called Nemesis Gate, a hangar so vast that even lunar sensors mistook it for a crater. Inside it slept ships no one outside Earth knew existed. Black hulls, no insignia, no records. They had names carved only into the steel by human hands: Retribution, Vigil, Erebus. The Council's intelligence picked up strange transmissions but dismissed them as static. After all, Earth's fleets were small, outdated, fractured. Humanity was a colony species at best, tolerated because they provided cheap soldiers and faster computing chips. But in those 3 days of silence, every human ship in every corner of the galaxy received a simple code, homefall. And when they decoded it, captains locked their courses towards Sol System. On the 4th day, the silence broke. Across the stars, communication channels flickered alive. Every council listening post, every alien station, every diplomatic ship heard the same transmission. A voice, calm, male, unmistakably human, spoke 6 words. "This is Earth Command," it said. A pause followed, long enough for every listener to lean closer. Then, "Now we end this war." The message repeated once and vanished. Panic rippled through the council. The message had come through encrypted channels they themselves built. Somehow, Earth had hijacked the network. The council's technicians couldn't trace it. Systems crashed. Data cores melted. The room filled with shouting. "Is it a bluff?" someone asked. "Maybe propaganda." But as they argued, the first human ship appeared beyond Mars, black as shadow, absorbing light. Scanners failed to read it. Its energy output was 0, its engines silent. Then, for a moment, its lights flared, a burning blue streak across the void, and it vanished again. A ghost in the dark. On Earth, people looked up at the sky and whispered. Some prayed. Some smiled. They didn't know the full plan, but they felt it, the shift, the awakening. Mercy was gone. In an underground hangar below the ruins of old New York, mechanics in oil-stained suits worked without rest. They welded armor, loaded rail shells the size of trains, and painted names on the sides of massive hulls. Soldiers stood beside the ships, watching. One of them, a young recruit named Jonas, whispered to his friend, "Do you think they'll forgive us for what we're about to do?" His friend didn't answer. Forgiveness was not part of the plan. The president stood before a camera, not to speak to the galaxy, but to her own people. "For years we begged for peace," she said softly. "We asked for a seat at their table. They burned our homes instead. So now we rise, not as victims, but as judges." Her voice trembled only once. "We will not show mercy again." The recording was never broadcast publicly. It was meant for history, for the future that would follow the fire. But fragments leaked. When people heard them, they didn't cry. They began to prepare. At the same time, in orbit above Earth, a line of satellites turned toward the sun. They had been weather satellites once, now repurposed into something darker. Their mirrors adjusted, collecting and focusing light. Energy readings spiked. Across the Pacific, radar operators stared at screens glowing red. "What are they doing?" one whispered. "They're waking the solar lance," another said, his voice shaking. No one had ever seen it tested. Meanwhile, deep in space, human diplomats were being recalled. Some refused, believing peace was still possible. Others vanished on the journey home, their ships silent. The Council's agents intercepted one distress call. A trembling human voice pleaded, "They found us. They're erasing everything," before the signal cut. Moments later, the alien ship that sent the intercept also disappeared. Fear began to spread. Even among the Council races, whispers grew. Maybe the humans were never weak, some said. Maybe they were only waiting. Back on Earth, a storm rolled across the Atlantic, lightning flashing over the ocean as if the planet itself raged. Inside the old fortress of Reykjavik Command, Admiral Kane watched the skies. Her aide approached quietly. "The fleets are ready," he said. "Every colony has answered the call." She nodded once, staring at the storm. "They think we're grieving," she murmured. "Let them think that a little longer." That night, every human child dreamed of fire. Psychologists later called it collective resonance, but the truth was deeper. Humanity had always been connected by emotion, by defiance, by the refusal to bow. And in that silence, they all felt the same thing, the need to rise. By dawn of the 5th day, alien news channels mocked Earth again. Still no response, commentators laughed. Still crying in their gravity well. They didn't see what hid behind the clouds. At exactly 0600 hours, the shadow of the TNS Nemesis passed over the moon. Cameras caught its silhouette, an impossible ship, larger than any dreadnought, moving without thrusters, its hull rippling with strange light. Alien watchers froze the frame, enhancing, zooming, analyzing. What they saw made them go silent. The hull bore no insignia, no nation, no flag, just a line of words etched by hand, "We remember." In that moment, the galaxy changed. Every human who saw the image knew what it meant. Humanity wasn't asking for justice anymore. They were preparing to deliver it. Inside the council chambers, chaos erupted again. "We must respond before they strike," shouted a general from the Tirathai Empire. "They cannot strike," replied another. "Their fleets are scraps." But the sensors disagreed. Dozens of unidentified objects appeared across human space, ships with no registry, no heat signatures. The council ordered surveillance drones, but none returned. The feed ended with static and a faint human voice whispering, "You had your chance." In the final hours before the storm, Earth's surface looked peaceful. Children went to school, trains moved, markets opened. But under every city, soldiers waited, weapons charged, systems synced to a single command code, Nemesis Protocol. When activated, every defense satellite, every railgun, every orbital station would fall under one control, Earth Central AI, codenamed Echo. Echo's voice echoed softly through the control network, calm and human-like. "Awaiting authorization," it said. The president placed her palm on the console. "Authorization Alpha," she whispered. "For Colony 17. The AI paused. Authorization accepted. Somewhere in orbit, a red light blinked on. At that instant, the council broadcast another statement. "The human species must learn its place," they declared. "We will send peacekeepers to ensure order." The word peacekeepers tasted of blood. And the people of Earth, watching that transmission, finally stopped being afraid. They stopped being civilized. In one last moment of quiet, before the stars turned red, a small boy in Nairobi looked up at the night sky and asked his mother, "Will they hurt us again?" She looked at him, at the faint glimmer of satellites passing overhead, and shook her head. "No, my son," she said softly. "This time, they will learn what it means to hurt humanity." And somewhere, far beyond Mars, Admiral Reeves, alive, hidden, waiting, watched his fleet rise from the dark side of the moon. His voice, steady and cold, came through the comms. "All units, on my mark. The Council has had its era of peace. Now it's our turn." The countdown began. Earth no longer whispered. It was ready to roar. The message, "Now we end this war," echoed through the void like thunder that refused to fade. The Galactic Council still argued in its shining hall, trying to decide whether the signal was real or another human trick. But far from their golden worlds, the truth was already moving. In the blackness beyond Mars, a shape the size of a mountain drifted into view, its surface darker than space itself. Its name written in faint gray letters that scanners could not read. Nemesis, the first of Earth's ghosts, a ship that should not have existed, built in silence, forged in secret beneath the oceans of a planet the Council believed helpless. Its engines whispered instead of roared, its armor swallowed light, and the moment it powered up, every alien probe in the Sol system vanished from the network. Beneath the seas of the Pacific, the Ark network pulsed alive, ancient machines singing a song of activation. Hidden dry docks cracked open and released rising titans. Submarines unfolded into starships, freighters became carriers, mining rigs became artillery platforms, and as the dark hulls reached the surface, waves broke around them like the Earth itself exhaling. On the decks stood crews in gray uniforms without flags, men and women who had trained in silence for decades, each one carrying the weight of Colony 17 in their hearts. Above them the clouds turned red from the heat of launch drives igniting, and the planet that once begged for peace now armed itself for vengeance. The Council's intelligence division received blurred readings, massive energy bursts under the ocean, electromagnetic shadows over every continent, but dismissed them as earthquakes, until the stars near Jupiter flickered, until their satellites melted under a storm of interference. The technicians screamed that entire sectors were blind, and then the Council's feed went dead. the image of the Nemesis filled their monitors for a single second, just long enough to see its prow marked with one phrase, "We remember." On Earth, Admiral Asher Kane stood in the control hall of Geneva Command, her eyes red from sleepless nights, her voice calm as she whispered to the planetary AI, "Activate Ghost Fleet." Beneath her feet hundreds of silos opened, releasing drones that climbed into orbit like silver rain, each drone linked to the others through quantum threads, forming a shield of light around the planet. And in the darkness of space, the Nemesis's sister ships blinked into existence. Retribution, Vigil, Leviathan, and Erebus, ships thought impossible, born from old blueprints banned by the Council, fueled by stolen tech. Human genius mixed with desperation. Engines that bent gravity instead of fighting it. Weapons that drew power directly from stars. On the far colonies, human miners, traders, and exiled soldiers received the recall code Homefall and dropped everything. Their small ships burned through hyperspace lanes without permission. Convoys formed out of nowhere. Thousands of vessels converging towards Sol, some barely holding together. But they came because they understood. Earth had finally spoken, and its words meant war. In the alien core worlds, politicians laughed again, calling humanity dramatic, a species addicted to theater. But their laughter faltered when reports arrived from the outer sectors. 3 Council supply stations gone dark, no distress calls, no debris, just silence. One patrol ship found drifting near the ruins of Station Kara. Its black box filled with static except for a single human phrase repeated endlessly, "You forgot us." Inside the Nemesis, Admiral Elias Reeves watched the stars through the viewport, his reflection ghostly in the glass. The man long thought dead by both humans and aliens alike, his scars glowing faintly under command deck lights. "We hid long enough," he said to his second-in-command, Captain Yora Lin, who nodded silently. Around them the crew moved like a single organism. No shouts, no panic, only focus, every console alive with data, every heart steady. Reeves raised his hand and the fleet's engines flared to life, course set for the Council frontier. "No transmissions, no mercy," he said, and the fleet moved. The first engagement came hours later at the border of the Velcor sector, a fortified gate defended by 15 alien cruisers. They hailed, demanding identification. The Nemesis did not answer. It simply accelerated. Its railguns fired once. A flash of light bright enough to blind sensors. When the brightness faded, the gate was gone. The cruisers torn apart, their wrecks spinning slowly. And the human ships vanished again before reinforcements arrived, leaving behind a message carved into a surviving hull: "Justice for 17." Across alien media, panic spread. Commentators shouted for unity against the terrorists from Sol. Old rivalries reignited, empires blamed one another. Yet none dared send fleets toward Earth. They still believed in their illusion of control. But deep inside their data networks, ghosts moved. Human algorithms, self-replicating codes that erased surveillance, shut down factories, redirected resources to nowhere. Entire economies stuttered. Governments fought their own machines. And by the time they realized the infiltration, it was too late. Humanity's second weapon was already inside their systems. Back on Earth, civilians saw none of this. They only saw the sky streaked with trails of light as more ships ascended. Families waved from rooftops, not in sorrow but pride. The world that once looked outward for approval now looked upward for retribution. The silence of grief had become the roar of unity. Even children understood that something unstoppable had begun. The day the Ghost Fleet rose from the oceans. The day the stars watched humanity return to war. In the council chamber, fear cracked the marble calm. "This is impossible," shouted one elder. "They were centuries behind us," another whispered. "Maybe we never looked close enough." The holograms on their desks flickered again, showing expanding heat signatures near Neptune. "Dozens, maybe hundreds," one analyst gasped. "Those are launch drives," another muttered. "No, those are declarations." The council ordered fleets to intercept, but the commands never reached their admirals. Human code had locked their networks. Their own ships ignored orders, drifting aimlessly, blind. Reeves stood on the bridge while reports streamed in. 3 enemy fleets destroyed. 1 surrendered without a fight. His jaw tightened, not in triumph but grim resolve. "We warned them for decades," he said. "Now we teach them what they taught us." Captain Lin asked, "Do we broadcast demands?" Reeves shook his head. "No more talk," he replied. Words died with 17. The bridge lights dimmed as the fleet engaged stealth. their hulls melting into the void, and the darkness of space became their ally. For the Council, it was the beginning of confusion. For humanity, it was the beginning of vengeance. The fleet that shouldn't exist had become real, moving between stars unseen, striking with precision. Vanishing before retaliation. The myth of human weakness shattered. Every alien who once called them primitive now whispered their name with fear. And back on Earth, under the same quiet sky, billions watched encrypted transmissions from Reeves's flagship, short clips showing alien warships burning, Council stations collapsing, enemy commanders kneeling, no words, no music, only the sight of power unleashed, and in every home the same thought grew. Earth had snapped, and the galaxy would never forget the sound. The galaxy had begun to tremble, whispers spreading faster than light, fleets vanishing without distress calls, outposts erased. With surgical precision, and amid that storm one name returned from the dead, Admiral Elias Reeves, the ghost of Titan, the man the Council believed they had burned to ash years ago. But the universe was about to learn that humanity never buries its ghosts, it makes them legends. His name first appeared in intercepted fragments, a coded transmission bouncing across a dozen Council channels. A calm voice saying only, "This is Admiral Reeves. Stand down or be erased." They thought it was a trick, but then came the images. The Council's defense ring over Phaedron 9 torn apart in seconds, the sky burning blue with railgun fire, and among the wreckage floated a human dreadnought, its name clear on the hull, Nemesis, alive and commanding. Inside the Nemesis, Reeves stood tall on the command deck, a man carved by war and silence, his uniform black with no flag, his face marked by the old scars of Titan, the same battle where he was declared dead, his eyes cold but alive with something darker than vengeance, purpose, maybe faith in humanity's rage. Around him, the crew moved like shadows, every officer silent, every console humming in perfect rhythm, their voices low, their movements sharp. Reeves's second-in-command, Captain Yora Lin, approached, her expression hard but her voice almost reverent. All fleets report in, Admiral. Ghost Fleet Alpha through Omega standing by. Reeves nodded once, his hands behind his back, staring into the void. Then the galaxy will remember us not for our mercy, but for our memory. The war that began as revenge had now become a message. The Council's arrogance burned in every explosion. Their once mighty empires shrinking as humans appeared from nowhere, hitting trade routes, command centers, supply lines, and leaving nothing but silence behind. Reeves had planned this for decades, since the day Titan fell, since the day he watched the Council fleet bomb refugees and call it strategy. He had survived the fire, hidden in the black systems where no beacon shone, building, waiting, gathering those who still believed that peace had failed. And now, the galaxy watched helplessly as his vengeance unfolded like prophecy. On the third week of the campaign, the Council tried diplomacy, sending envoys, broadcasting apologies across the sectors, calling for restraint, promising investigation. But humanity did not reply. They sent silence and warheads instead. Reeves's fleet struck the Council's central archive world, Iridian Prime, not to destroy it but to erase every record that called humans primitive. Centuries of propaganda burned away in moments. Libraries turned to smoke, and when the Council demanded a reason, Reeves sent only one sentence back: "You built this lie. We're correcting it." His strategies were unlike any the Council had seen. His ships appeared from hyperspace without signatures, fired with impossible precision, then vanished through artificial singularities. The laws of physics bent under human will, and the aliens began to realize that the species they mocked for their emotions had turned emotion into a weapon. In the Council chamber, panic replaced arrogance. Their leaders argued over which species to blame. Some whispered that Reeves had made pacts with ancient machines. Others said Earth had found the gods of war themselves. But none of them understood the truth. Reeves didn't need gods, he had humans. On the bridge of the Nemesis, he stood before the great holomap, watching entire sectors turn red. One of his officers spoke softly, "Admiral, the media calls you the Butcher of Iridian." Reeves didn't flinch, his gaze stayed on the map. "Then let history write the truth. We became butchers because they made slaughter a language." His voice was quiet, calm, almost gentle, but every word carried steel. "We offered peace and they burned our children. They wanted monsters. Let them meet one." Far away, on Earth, people gathered around screens showing encrypted transmissions leaked from the fleet, not speeches, Not celebrations, but moments. An alien fleet surrendering without a fight. A council world opening its gates to human medics instead of soldiers. Human banners of black and silver hung on alien towers. The galaxy beginning to understand that humanity's wrath was not blind chaos but cold, deliberate balance. Reeves wasn't destroying the galaxy, he was reshaping it, one empire at a time. The Council tried to fight back. They sent their Grand Armada, 1,000 ships strong, into the sector of Vega, expecting to trap the Nemesis fleet. But Reeves was already waiting. The human fleet lay silent inside a gas giant's magnetic field, invisible to scanners. When the Armada entered, the trap closed, railgun fire sliced through their formations like lightning through mist. Missiles moved with artificial intelligence guided by human instinct. Entire cruisers disintegrated before their captains could scream, and when the smoke cleared, only the human fleet remained. Reeves ordered the wrecks left to drift, their beacons transmitting one phrase into every language of the galaxy: the price of mercy denied. Whispers spread among alien worlds. Small species once ruled by the Council began to rise, following Earth's example. Revolts ignited like sparks across systems long chained. Reeves's message had become more than vengeance, it was revolution. Some even hailed him as a savior, others called him the destroyer of balance. But Reeves cared for neither. He cared only for the promise he made on the day Colony 17 burned: they will never hurt us again. On board the Nemesis, Captain Lin approached him again, the stars reflecting in her dark eyes. "Admiral, the Council offers unconditional surrender." Reeves didn't answer immediately, his hands rested on the console, his reflection merging with the stars. "Surrender," he repeated softly, almost to himself. "No. Not yet." He turned slowly, his voice heavy with memory. "They must understand what they destroyed. They must see what we became in their fire." The fleet's engines flared again, setting course deeper into Council territory. In the Council's war room, alien leaders shouted, pointing at holograms of human fleets sweeping through systems faster than light. Their defense grids collapsing, their admirals refusing orders. One voice cried, "They're not fighting like us, they're fighting like ghosts," and someone whispered, "Because they are ghosts, ghosts of the people we burned." The realization spread. Reeves wasn't leading an army of the living alone. He carried the vengeance of the dead. Days later, as the Nemesis entered the capital system of the Council, Reeves stood before the viewport watching the twin suns of Arcturus rise, his ship's sensors capturing the alien world below, a jewel of cities and towers shining under the light, the same world whose rulers called Earth a failed experiment. He gave no speech, no warning, only a command: fire. The main railgun lit up, its shot breaking the atmosphere like a sunrise of vengeance. It didn't hit the capital, it hit the orbital symbol of the Council's pride. Their great hall, a monument built from the tribute of conquered species. The explosion shattered its spires into dust, a silent declaration that the age of humiliation was over. Then, for the first time since the war began, Reeves opened a public channel, his voice echoing across every frequency in the known galaxy, calm, deep, unshaken. "For centuries you called us uncivilized. For decades you measured us by how much we obeyed. Today, we measure you by how much you survive." The message ended, and silence followed, a silence that stretched across empires, a silence that tasted like fear. Back on Earth, millions listened to the broadcast replayed endlessly. Some wept, some cheered, but all understood that humanity had crossed the line forever. Reeves had become both a savior and a warning, proof of what happens when mercy ends. As the Nemesis turned away from the wreckage, Captain Lin asked quietly, "Admiral, where do we go now?" Reeves looked at the stars, their light cold and distant. "We go where their arrogance still breathes," he said, his tone steady, "until the galaxy learns the meaning of loss." The fleet disappeared into the void, and in its wake, the Council's empire began to collapse, its members turning on each other, terrified that humanity would come for them next. Reeves's legend spread like wildfire. The ghosts of Titan and Colony 17 now had their avenger, and every species that had once sneered at humanity now whispered a prayer that Earth would never look their way. In the cold darkness of space, aboard the Nemesis, Reeves stood alone at the viewport, the stars reflecting in his eyes like silent witnesses, his face unreadable, his voice barely a whisper. "They laughed at our mercy," he said, "now they'll beg for our silence." And somewhere far behind him, on Earth, a child looked at the night sky and asked, "Mama, are the stars safe now?" And she answered, "No, child, not yet. The storm has just begun." The war had reached the edges of sanity. The stars themselves seemed to flinch every time a human ship entered a system. Empires that once ruled for millennia now whispered in fear. The Galactic Council's fleets scattered, their admirals desperate, their pride burned away by a species they once called temporary. Reports came from every frontier, cities gone, garrisons erased, colonies silent. No one could stop them, because no one understood how they fought. Humanity had become a storm, one that struck without warning, vanished without trace, and left behind nothing but ash and memory. And at the heart of that storm stood the nemesis, black as the void, a moving shadow of vengeance. From its bridge Admiral Reeves watched the chaos unfold, the faint light of dying stars reflecting in his eyes. He had not slept in days, maybe weeks, but he didn't need to. Rage was enough to keep him awake, rage and duty. The two things that had carried him from Titan to this moment. And now, as he looked toward the swirling mass of red and gold on the screen, he saw their next target. The Council's last stronghold, the fortress world of Aurelian, orbiting a dying sun, defended by more than 2,000 ships, a world built to symbolize power, built to intimidate, built to last forever. But forever had just met humanity. Down on Earth, people stood in silence before their screens, waiting. They knew something was coming, every channel, every network, every city light dimmed as if the planet itself held its breath. No music, no chatter, only the quiet sound of wind and heartbeats. Children were told to look at the sky, to remember it, because after this day, it would never look the same. In orbit the great array known as the solar lance began to hum. A ring of satellites circling the sun, dormant since the last century, created as a peaceful energy project, secretly transformed into a weapon of unimaginable power. It connected the heart of the sun to Earth's will, and today, for the first time, it would fire. "Target coordinates locked," said Commander Lin, her hands hovering over the control, her voice steady but eyes heavy, "Ready on your mark." Reeves didn't answer at once. He stared at the tactical map. 2,000 enemy ships forming a wall around Aurelian. Their guns pointed outward, their shields glowing blue, ready for war. He spoke finally, his voice calm, "Begin transmission." Across the human fleet, the comms went live, one message broadcasting to every human soldier, every ship, every civilian listening from Earth to Mars. "For the fallen of 17, Reeves said, "for every voice they silenced, for every child they burned, we answer." The command went through. The solar lance flared, the sun itself brightened, its corona expanding, its energy twisted into a single beam of white fire that cut through the dark like the blade of a god. It passed silently through the void, invisible for seconds, then struck the heart of Aurelian's defense grid, one by one. Council ships vanished in bursts of light too bright for sensors to track. The fortress shields shattered, orbital platforms melted. Their screams echoed across the open channels. "Impossible. It's the sun, they're weaponizing the sun." Someone cried before static consumed the transmission, and from Earth's surface, the sky glowed crimson, a sunrise of vengeance spreading across continents, painting clouds with fury. People fell to their knees not in fear but awe. They whispered the same words, "We're awake." Children pointed at the red streaks and smiled, knowing somehow that humanity had done the impossible. The sky itself had become their weapon. It was not just revenge anymore. It was declaration. The galaxy would remember this day as the day Earth burned the heavens. Reeves didn't move. He stood still, watching the tactical feed as enemy fleets disintegrated, their formations collapsing. The once mighty Aurelian fortress breaking apart like a dying star. The light filled his eyes, his voice cold as stone. "End transmission," he said. The bridge fell silent except for the faint hum of systems cooling. Commander Lin exhaled, trembling for the first time. "It's over," she whispered, but Reeves didn't answer. He turned away, his reflection flickering on the viewport. "No," he said quietly, "it's begun." Across alien space, panic became chaos. Empires that once mocked Earth began sealing their borders. Diplomats begged for negotiations. Priests prayed to long-dead gods, trying to understand how one planet could command the sun. In Council territory riots erupted. Citizens demanded answers. Some claimed the Council had angered an ancient force. Others swore humanity had merged with the stars themselves. But the truth was simpler and far more terrifying. Humans had stopped believing in limits. In the ruins of Aurelian, floating debris glowed red. Council survivors drifted in their crippled ships. Their messages scattered across the void. "We surrender," one voice pleaded, "please, mercy." But the nemesis had already turned away. Reeves had made his decision. No more mercy, no more waiting, only silence and justice. Back on Earth, the world didn't celebrate. There was no cheering, no parades, no laughter, only quiet understanding. People lit candles, not for victory but remembrance. They remembered the faces of the lost, the families of 17, the soldiers of Titan, the nameless engineers who built the ghost fleet beneath the oceans. Humanity didn't smile at what it had done. It simply nodded. It was necessary, it was deserved. In the council remnants, surviving admirals gathered in secrecy, faces pale with exhaustion. One of them slammed his fist on the table. "We must retaliate," he shouted. "We must show them we still rule." Another replied bitterly, "Rule? You call this rule? We rule the ashes." Silence followed. Then an older voice spoke, trembling. "They are no longer human," he said. "They are something else now, something born from their own fire." And as those words left his mouth, the lights in the room flickered, the holographic walls rippled, and a shadow appeared, Reeves's face, projected through their own network, his voice steady, quiet, final, "No. We are exactly what you made us." The projection ended, their systems died, and every remaining council ship reported the same message flashing across their screens: "We remember." The day dragged into endless night, the light from the solar lance fading slowly, the oceans of Earth reflecting red, and in that glow, Admiral Reeves stood at the viewport of his ship, staring at the faint shimmer of the sun, its light carrying the ghosts of what he'd unleashed. Behind him Captain Lynn approached, her voice barely audible. "Admiral, the world is hailing you." Reeves didn't turn. "Let them wait," he said, his tone soft. "The universe needs a moment to understand what it just saw." Far below, in the streets of New London, people whispered the new name history had given this day, the day the sky burned. No war declaration, no council ruling, no politician's speech had ever carried such weight. Because this was not the day Earth fought. This was the day Earth changed, the day mercy became myth, and forgiveness became legend. As the night deepened, Reeves walked alone through the silent corridors of the Nemesis, the ship humming like a living thing around him. He passed the memorial wall where names glowed softly. Those lost at 17, Titan, Iridian, thousands of names, thousands of memories. He paused, placed his hand on the wall, and whispered, "We've begun what they started, but we'll end it our way." The stars outside flickered, reflecting the fire of the sun still echoing across space. And somewhere deep in the black, new signals appeared. Unknown energy readings, far beyond council space, something watching, something listening. Reeves didn't see it yet, but the storm he'd unleashed was awakening more than just fear. It was awakening something ancient, something patient, something waiting for humanity to finish what it had begun. But for now, there was silence again, not the silence of peace, but of awe. The galaxy hushed, every world staring at the red sky, every species realizing that the humans they laughed at had rewritten the rules of power. On Earth, a young soldier looked up at the glowing heavens and said to his brother, "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" The brother shook his head slowly, eyes reflecting the burning light. "They don't have to," he said. "We're not asking anymore." And in that moment, as the last light from the solar lance faded, humanity stood alone at the edge of its own legend, no longer the frightened species begging for a seat at the table, but the ones standing over the ruins of empires, holding the sun itself as a weapon. The sky burned, the stars trembled, and every world whispered the same truth. The age of mercy was over, and the age of humanity had begun. The galaxy had never known silence like this, the kind that feels alive, heavy, crawling. Across every comm channel, stretching between dying stars and broken fleets, even the empires that once filled the void with arrogance now spoke in whispers, and in that silence, the Galactic Council, the so-called eternal authority of the cosmos, began to crumble under the weight of its own lies, their golden halls of order and reason now echoing with panic and fear, holographic banners flickering as the councillors screamed over one another. "It's not possible," shouted one, his crest trembling. One planet cannot bring down a civilization built over millennia. But another voice cut through the noise, cold and shaking, they already have. The chamber of the High Council was a cathedral of glass suspended over the capital world of Arcturus, but its light was gone, the windows cracked, emergency systems flickering, guards lined the walls unsure who to protect, because loyalty had shattered like the glass under their feet. Accusations filled the air. Some shouted that the human attack on Aurelian had been provoked by their own greed, others demanded retaliation, but their fleets were gone, their admirals missing, their AI networks infected with human code that whispered through their systems like ghosts repeating "we remember" until the machines themselves refused to obey, and one by one, the Council's command hubs went dark. In a small chamber beneath the Council floor, the few who still thought clearly gathered. The Speaker of the Council, her once silver robe now torn and stained, looked across the table at her frightened peers. "We built this empire on control," she said, her voice cracking. "But you cannot control a species that refuses to kneel." And outside, above the city, the sky flickered red, the remnants of the solar lance glow still haunting their atmosphere, a constant reminder that Earth had touched their sun and lived. Admiral Reeves watched from orbit, the nemesis positioned beyond Arcturus's reach, his face illuminated by the soft light of the dying Council capital. "They called this peace," he said quietly to Captain Lin. "Peace built on obedience, peace bought with chains, and now they see what freedom costs." Lin nodded but said nothing, her eyes on the holographic feed showing chaos spreading through the city below. Civilians looting, soldiers deserting, Council banners burning in the streets. And through the smoke, a strange sight appeared: humans, soldiers of Reeves's fleet, walking calmly through the ruins, not to conquer but to dismantle. They disabled defense grids, freed prisoners, and left, leaving silence in their wake, a silence more powerful than any weapon. Inside the Council's Grand Hall, the Speaker tried one final plea, broadcasting across every surviving channel, her voice trembling as she faced the galaxy. "This is not victory," she cried. "This is extinction. If humanity continues, there will be nothing left to rule." But the broadcast barely lasted seconds before a new image replaced it. Admiral Reeves's face appeared across their own network, calm, pale, eyes steady, the same voice that had haunted their dreams since the fall of Aurelian. "You called us primitives," he said softly. "You burned our colonies, you erased our children, and now you ask for mercy. But tell me, where was your mercy when the skies of 17 burned red?" His image leaned closer, shadows covering his eyes. "You wanted gods, and now you've made one." The feed cut, and in the next moment, every Council communication array shut down. Their power grids overloaded, their data wiped, their archives erased from existence, centuries of records, decrees, and histories gone in seconds. And when they tried to reboot, all that appeared on the screens was a single human phrase glowing like fire: "Now you remember us." On the outer colonies, where alien species once paid tribute to the Council, rebellion broke out, their people rising, inspired by humanity's defiance. Small worlds that had bowed for centuries now shouted in the streets, "We are free." And many carried banners marked not with their own emblems but with the symbol of Earth. A simple blue sphere surrounded by a ring of fire. To some it meant hope, to others it meant terror. But either way, it meant change. The galaxy's center no longer sat on Arcturus, it had moved to Sol. In the depths of space, Reeves's fleets expanded, no longer just soldiers but engineers, builders, diplomats of war. They didn't conquer worlds. They dismantled the old system, tearing down slave markets, disarming planetary governors, destroying debt vaults that had chained whole species, and broadcasting it live. The galaxy watched in disbelief as humans dismantled the empire of the Council with discipline, precision, and purpose. No speeches, no parades, only results. One planet at a time. The Council tried to retaliate with what little power remained, assembling a desperate armada of ships from loyal worlds. But when they arrived near Vega to launch their counterattack, they found nothing, just empty space, until space itself shimmered, and out of the darkness came the Ghost Fleet, thousands of black ships in perfect formation, their hulls silent, their weapons charged. Reeves's voice filled the comms, calm as a grave. "This is your final warning," he said. "Turn back, or join. The silence you made." The Council commander hesitated, his voice breaking. "We cannot retreat. We are the Council." Reeves's tone didn't change, not anymore. And with that, the nemesis fired once. A beam of light cut through space. The command ship vanished, and the rest followed like falling stars. Back in the crumbling capital, the speaker watched the final reports fade. She fell to her knees before the empty council seats, whispering, "We were supposed to lead them." But there was no one left to listen. Outside her window, human dropships descended through the burning sky, not to destroy, but to collect, their mission clear: end the council, remove its core, erase the last trace of its tyranny. Reeves walked through the great hall hours later, the once bright marble floors covered in dust, the walls cracked, holograms dead. His footsteps echoed through the ruin like judgment itself. Soldiers followed in silence, Captain Lin at his side. "Admiral," she said, her voice cautious. "They're surrendering everywhere. The council's command has collapsed." Reeves stopped, looked up at the broken emblem of the council above the dais. "Collapse," he repeated. "No, Lin, this isn't collapse. This is correction." He stepped onto the dais and tore the emblem from its base, letting it fall and shatter. The sound rang like thunder through the empty chamber. "For 17, he whispered. Outside, human flags were never raised, because Reeves refused them. He ordered every world liberated by his fleet to choose its own rule. No empire, no new council, only balance. But balance enforced by the shadow of Earth. And so the galaxy began to reshape, its power fractured, its old rulers gone, its survivors humbled. Yet as the fires dimmed and the sky cleared, something else stirred. Reports of strange readings at the edge of known space began to reach the Nemesis. Massive energy signatures. Patterns older than the council itself. Alien voices speaking from the void. Reeves listened quietly, the static whispering like ghosts. "They're watching," Captain Lin said, her voice uncertain. Reeves nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Then let them watch," he replied. "Let them see what happens when humanity stops being civilized." On Earth, the people looked to the stars no longer with fear but with recognition. The sky that once burned now glowed calm and blue again. Cities rebuilt. Children played under peaceful light. But every human knew the truth. Peace was not a gift. It was a weapon they had earned with fire, and above them, orbiting silently in the dark, the Nemesis remained, ever watchful, the guardian of a world that had turned pain into power. In the ruins of the Council's archive, the last surviving AI of Arcturus activated itself one final time, attempting to record the end. Its voice hollow, broken. "The Council has fallen," it said. "Humanity reigns, not as conquerors, but as consequence." Its core overheated, its light faded, and its last data packet transmitted a single image. Admiral Reeves standing under the shattered Council emblem, his face half in shadow, half in the glow of fire, a symbol of everything the galaxy had done wrong, and everything it would now have to answer for. The Galactic Council was gone, its fleets reduced to dust, its members scattered across the stars like the ashes of arrogance. And as their worlds dimmed one by one, humanity rose in their place, not as rulers but as reminders, that mercy, once broken, never returns the same. Reeves watched it all from his ship, silent, calm, eternal. The man who had turned grief into justice, silence into thunder, and vengeance into history. And as the stars reflected in his eyes, he whispered to no one and everyone at once, "We warned them. We begged them. Now they understand." And in that whisper, the galaxy finally listened. The galaxy thought the war was over. The Council's capital lay in ruins, its fleets scattered like dust in solar wind. But Earth had not stood down, because peace built on fear was only the illusion of calm, and Reeves knew illusions better than anyone. He had lived through them, seen treaties written in blood and lies, and he refused to let it happen again. Above the quiet blue curve of his home world the Nemesis hung like a scar on heaven, a ship so vast it cast shadows over the moon's surface, and yet on Earth below there was movement, rebuilding, awakening, every city alive with the same heartbeat. Humanity had changed. The planet had learned the cost of mercy and found something stronger. Unity born of pain, forged in silence, unbroken even by fire. The planet that once begged now watched the stars with eyes unblinking. Admiral Reeves stood before the viewport, his reflection surrounded by the faint light of Earth, oceans glimmering far below, his voice calm as he spoke to Captain Lin. "They think it's over," he said. "But they're already gathering again. You can smell their fear turning into hate." Lin nodded. "The reports from the outer sectors confirm it. Fragments of the old council are rebuilding, mercenary fleets, rogue warlords, trying to claim what's left. Reeves's gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. "Then we show them Earth does not kneel." His words rolled through the command deck like thunder muffled by distance. Soft but final. Every officer understood. Earth would never again wait for permission to survive. In the months that followed, alien fleets crept near the borders of Sol, testing the silence, probing the defenses, and what they found was not weakness. The void beyond Pluto shimmered with metal. Hundreds of defense rings linked in orbit, each one armed with kinetic cannons capable of breaking moons. Drones swarmed like insects, invisible until they struck, and hidden deep beneath the polar ice were reactors older than the war itself. Reactors that fed Earth's new shield, a dome of energy. That wrapped the planet like glass made of light. Nothing got in, nothing got out without permission. The fortress of humanity was complete. Alien spies called it paranoia, but the truth was different. Earth had seen the galaxy's nature. It took mercy as weakness, kindness as surrender, and so Earth had become the planet that refused to kneel, no longer part of anyone's empire, no longer answerable to councils or gods. Humanity stood alone and unyielding, watching, waiting, and behind the peace of its cities was the shadow of the nemesis, silent, watchful, endless. But peace never lasts, not when the universe is full of envy. The first strike came from the surviving members of the Council Alliance, small, desperate. A coalition of shattered empires trying to reclaim relevance. They entered the Sol frontier cloaked, confident that Earth had grown complacent. But Reeves had anticipated them. He had left the frontier dark for a reason. No patrols, no signals, nothing but silence, a trap waiting to be sprung. The moment the first alien fleet crossed Neptune's orbit, the trap closed, energy nets unfolded like wings, ships vanished in white flashes. Their weapons turned against them. Their systems overridden by code Reeves had written himself decades ago. The last transmission captured by alien relays was the voice of a dying commander whispering, "They were waiting for us." In the aftermath, Reeves called a meeting aboard the Nemesis. His officers gathered around the holographic table showing the remnants of the fleet. Lynn spoke first. "They won't stop, sir. Every empire that falls will send its vultures." Reeves nodded slowly. "Then we remind them of what mercy costs." His eyes hardened. No negotiations, no treaties, not until they learn. His command echoed across every ship in the fleet. And once again the engines of vengeance began to hum. Far beyond the reach of Earth's influence, the smaller alien species began to see what was coming, and many did not resist. Instead they reached out to humanity, offering alliance, offering loyalty, not out of fear but survival. Reeves accepted none of it. He didn't want subjects, he wanted witnesses. Every world liberated from the Council's tyranny was ordered to stand free. No human rule, no taxes, no tribute, only one law. Never again raise a hand against Earth. It became known across the stars as the Terran Edict, and those who obeyed it thrived. Those who tested it vanished quietly. Within months, Earth's fleet grew stronger, faster, stranger. New ships forged from alien technology but bearing human design. Sleek, sharp, silent. Weapons that bent gravity and harnessed light. They didn't roar through space. They whispered through it, invisible, unstoppable. The galaxy began calling them the Quiet Ones. Ghost fleets that appeared from nothing and left only wreckage behind. Reeves's name became myth. The man who conquered without conquest, who built peace from terror, and, above him, Earth watched, patient and still. A god made of soil and flame. On the surface, the world changed. There were no flags anymore. No nations, humanity was one. The same words written across every city dome. We remember, and people did, not with hatred but with pride. Their children grew up learning not of the wars but of the silence before them. The day Earth stopped being afraid, and when they looked at the night sky, they didn't dream of escape. They dreamed of defense, of strength, of never again. But Reeves knew the silence could not last forever. He saw it in the data. The strange energy readings coming from deep space. Signals not of war but of curiosity. Something ancient stirring beyond the edge of mapped stars. He stood alone in the observation chamber one night, watching those readings shimmer across the screen. "They're coming," he said softly, "not to conquer, not to beg, but to see what we've become." Captain Lin's voice came from behind him. "Do we fight them too?" Reeves turned, his face lit by the glow of distant galaxies. "Only if they try to make us kneel." Months passed, and the galaxy adjusted to its new order, one built not on fear of punishment but memory of consequence. Earth sent envoys not as servants but as equals. When humans entered alien capitals, silence followed, not the silence of oppression, but of respect. Every leader who once mocked them now bowed, quietly, sincerely. The council's ruins became monuments, their stones left untouched, their symbols preserved as warnings carved with Reeves's words. Mercy ends here. On the anniversary of the solar lance, all of Earth stood still again. Lights dimmed across every city, not for mourning but for remembrance. Reeves spoke to them from orbit, his voice deep, steady. We are not monsters, he said, we are the product of monsters. We asked for peace, they gave us fire. We offered hands, they gave us chains. But we broke the chains, and we keep them now as reminders. He paused, eyes heavy with memory. Do not forget what silence cost us. Do not forget that mercy without justice is surrender. Humanity does not kneel. The transmission ended, the stars over Earth burned bright, and for the first time in history, the galaxy looked upon one world and saw something greater than an empire. It saw a promise, that no matter how vast the cosmos became, there would always be one planet, one species, one people who would never bow. As the Nemesis drifted above that glowing world, its engines silent, its purpose complete, Reeves closed his eyes for the first time in years, his voice barely a whisper to himself. Let them come. Whoever they are, will be ready. And far beyond the rim, unseen by any sensor, something vast stirred in the dark, watching, waiting, remembering, because even the stars now knew the truth. There was one planet that refused to kneel, and its name was Earth. The galaxy slept uneasy, stars flickered as if afraid to shine. Every world that once stood proud under the rule of the Council now bowed in silence, not out of fear, but awe, because the universe had changed, and the center of power no longer rested in golden towers or marble halls. It rested on a small blue planet whose people had learned that peace built on forgiveness is only peace for those who never bled. Earth stood unchallenged, its silence heavier than any declaration, its fleets drifting through the dark like ghosts carrying the memory of justice, and among them, aboard the Nemesis, Admiral Reeves watched the endless night of space, his reflection broken by the light of distant suns, his hands clasped behind his back, his uniform black and unmarked, his eyes the color of storm clouds ready to break. He had won the war, ended the Council, reshaped the galaxy. But victory never felt like peace, it felt like waiting for something that was coming. Earth had become a fortress world, a living planet of steel and sky. The defense rings glowed faintly above the atmosphere, railgun platforms turning in silence. The people below no longer looked to the stars with fear, they looked with expectation. Because even though the Council was gone, the universe had grown too quiet, too quickly. Scientists detected gravitational anomalies beyond the galactic rim, signals older than language, patterns that seemed to answer every Terran broadcast with echoes, and Reeves knew what it meant. The galaxy was listening. Something beyond the known civilizations was awake. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Captain Lin approached him, the light of Earth glowing behind her. The outposts at Vega report strange readings again. Admiral, she said softly, not Council remnants, something different. Reeves didn't turn. How different? Lin hesitated. It's not a fleet. It's like an entire system moving. Reeves's eyes narrowed slightly. Then it's not a remnant, he said, it's a response. He walked slowly to the center console, the stars flickering on the map like dying embers. Tell the fleets to hold position, no action until we know what we're dealing with. Lin nodded. Though she knew what he was thinking, Earth had unleashed fear across the galaxy, and fear always called out to something darker. Down on Earth, people felt it too, though they couldn't explain why. The air carried a quiet tension, birds moved strangely, the oceans pulsed with unseen currents. Something in the gravity itself felt wrong, as if the planet knew it was being watched, and across the colonies, miners and traders sent strange reports. New constellations appearing where there were none, whispers of shapes moving behind the light of stars, and every night, Earth's astronomers received the same repeating signal from the edge of the void, not words, not numbers, but a rhythm. 3 long pulses, 1 short, then silence, again and again. The same pattern across hundreds of systems, and Reeves could not ignore it. In the command chamber of the Nemesis, Reeves gathered his senior officers, the air heavy with static from the deep space transmissions. They're responding to the Lance event, Lin said, her voice tight. Whatever's out there saw what we did to the Council. And they're coming. Reeves stood silent for a long moment, the hum of the engines filling the void between words. Then we meet them, he said finally. We don't hide, we don't kneel, and we don't apologize. He looked around at his officers, faces calm, eyes steady. Earth stood alone once and it will again if it must. But we will never be prey, not again. The fleet prepared, not for war but for encounter. Massive stations lit up across the Sol system, power surging through the defense rings, the solar lance recharging slowly, the entire planet breathing in anticipation. On the surface, people gathered in the streets, staring at the sky, parents holding their children close, old veterans standing in silence, their medals glinting under starlight. They didn't know what was coming, but they knew who would meet it. Admiral Reeves and the fleet that carried humanity's will. Days passed, then weeks, until the signal changed. This time it wasn't just pulses, it was speech, distorted, ancient, alien. We saw your fire, the voice said, and now we come to see the hand that threw it. Reeves stood at the center of the bridge, listening to the transmission repeat, every word crawling with static like wind over bone. Lynn whispered, "They're not afraid," Reeves answered softly, "They don't need to be." The crew stared at the main screen as something enormous began to emerge from hyperspace. Not a ship, not a fleet, but something older, darker, a structure the size of a moon, alive with blue light, its shape shifting like liquid metal. A voice echoed through every frequency in the system. "You burned the sky," it said, "you broke the silence, and we heard you." Every defense platform on Earth locked onto the object, railguns charged, missiles armed. But Reeves raised his hand. "Hold fire," he said, his tone low but firm. "Let's see what gods look like." The massive structure drifted closer, no weapons visible, no fleets behind it, just endless mass and movement. Then a beam of light stretched from its core, touching the atmosphere of Earth. Data streams exploded across every console, unreadable code flooding the systems. Lynn shouted, "They're scanning everything." Reeves stayed silent, his eyes on the beam. "Let them," he whispered. "Let them see what we are." Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the light vanished. The structure pulled away, fading into hyperspace, leaving only one message in its wake, burned into every ship's data banks. "We remember the Council, we watched their cruelty, and now we will watch yours." Reeves read it slowly, his jaw tightening. "So that's what this is," he said quietly, "judgment." Lynn frowned. "Admiral, what do we do?" Reeves turned toward the viewport, Earth shining beneath him, the stars stretching infinite beyond. "We prepare," he said. "The Council thought they could rule us. The galaxy thought they could contain us. Now something greater thinks it can judge us. Let them come." Back on Earth, the people saw the event as a sign. Some called it the return of gods. Others said it was punishment. But Reeves knew better. It wasn't divine. It was inevitable. Humanity had shouted too loud, burned too bright, and the universe had finally looked back. Night fell over the planet, and the lights of the defense rings glowed faintly red. Storm clouds gathered over the oceans. Thunder rolled across continents, and in that storm's reflection, humanity saw its own face. Defiant, unbroken, unashamed. They had burned empires, silenced tyrants, weaponized their sun, and now, even as the unknown loomed from the edge of the galaxy, they stood ready, not as conquerors or victims, but as the children of Earth, the planet that refused to kneel, the world that ended mercy and survived. Admiral Reeves walked alone to the observation deck one final time, his hand resting on the glass, the reflection of Earth burning blue beneath his fingertips. "We've come too far to be forgiven," he said softly, "and too strong to be forgotten." The ship's engines hummed like a heartbeat behind him. The voice of Echo, the ship's AI, filled the silence. "Admiral, incoming long-range scans detect another wave." Reeves smiled faintly. "Of course they're coming," he said. "They always come." And as the stars shifted, and space rippled like water, the first lights of the unknown fleet appeared beyond the edge of the system. Thousands of signatures, massive, silent, waiting. Reeves watched them appear one by one, his voice barely a whisper. "So this is how it begins again," he said. "The end of mercy, the beginning of something greater." He turned toward his crew, calm and unshaken. "Sound battle stations," he said. "But this time, we don't fight for vengeance. We fight for the right to exist." The alarms blazed through the ship, The hum of engines deepened, railguns aligned, plasma shields flared to life, and across the stars, Earth's fleet formed once more, the ghosts of humanity gathering under the black banners of remembrance, facing the unknown with the same silence that had once terrified the galaxy. In that silence, the universe held its breath, stars dimmed, and for one fleeting moment, everything was still. The calm before a new storm, the space between empires, the heartbeat of a species that refused to die, and as the light from Earth's blue oceans touched the hull of the Nemesis, Reeves spoke one last time, voice steady, cold, eternal. "Mercy is over," he said. "Now, we show them what comes after." And the sky burned again.